All right then. So, as far as games are concerned, no role-playing game is more famous than this one. And it lives on. It's the first. It'll continue living on for as long as someone owns the rights that is producing it. But the original version of the game is completely gone. Now, originally it was made in 1974 and came in a white box with multiple different booklets inside, and that was kind of the format initially. When this game came out, I have this. Comes in 2 books. When this thing came out, it was actually kind of a split product. Dungeons and Dragons, the basic, expert, companion, master, and immortal editions, they were more simple to digest. But they actually split off and had an advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which had the almost coloring book style quality art for the first couple of sets. Those were a separate product and actually a lot more in depth. The entire purpose behind the basic box, and of course the continuing boxes from there, introduce people to the hobby, to let them start role-playing and to get them involved in Dungeons & Dragons. As far as Dungeons & Dragons goes, the original game that's in this book is a bit different than what you'd expect. In fact, looking through that book, I've looked, it actually, your 2-hit chart, your THAC0, so to speak, is basic. It doesn't change in the first 3 levels, which is interesting because in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and in every version of Dungeons & Dragons we have today, there is that item where at least marshals increase their ability to hit an opponent every level. So this is a very, it's kind of funny because the original books had, at the time, terrific art by Jeff Aisley and Larry Elmore. Just look at this cleric. This is an amazingly good cleric. That is some fine quality art there. And so I'm glad to see, that this was the case. Now, the funny thing is, I didn't actually own one of these until well after I was first introduced to DnD. But I went back and, purchasing on eBay and whatnot, was able to get my, copies of this. Now, talking about the game itself, it's funny because it was split by levels. Basic was 1 through 3. Expert went back and had 1 through 14. And Expert also had the amazing art from Larry Elmore, Jeff Easley. And also, this one had, talk about some art pieces that actually I really, really liked. We have our, looks like a Celtic style woman, but she's training a Siberian or a Bengal looking tiger. It's actually pretty cool. Even in the expert rule book, it's kind of funny. They don't actually talk about when you go to each of the different classes. And that's funny. Class, not race. In this book, everything is a class. Even your, in the box sets, each race type was also a class. If you wanted to play an elf, congratulations. You are stuck playing an elf. You're not an elf wizard or an elf warrior or an elf blade dancer. You are an elf. And that's what you get. Your class is your race, essentially. Notice how there's no, hit tables here? They're actually on, page 26 or something? I'm just going over here. Battery of charts. This is definitely, even though it's easier to digest, definitely an old school game by comparison. And it's kind of fun. You have to kind of notice, so this is a normal man. Oh, and so this right down here is where it starts lining up what your armor class is. And then per level, whether you're a magic user, cleric, or fighter. With this just being the default, blah, you suck. Whereas an adventurer has one over your average normal person, supposedly. Nowadays, this would not be considered easygoing. This could be considered a hard game. This is the introductory stuff. This is designed for new people to get into this. So I find it hilarious that there's no real dumbing down of it. It's just broken down into, here's the basics, here's where the game really is made of. And honestly, the reason I only have these 2 books. I never really, felt much like going past 10th level. in this version of the game, you have 9th level as your name level, where by the time you reach 9th level, you roll your last hit die. And then after that, you gain like 1 or 2 hit points per level after that. And then you maybe have advancing spells, or maybe you get more followers. And your saving throws, I think, are modified after level 9, but you only ever rolled for hit points levels 1 through 9. There is an option that even mentions it in this book here. Your GM can tell you, no, just take max hit points at first level. That's not a new thing. It's been around since the Red Book, page 18 of the basic DM guide. So I thought that was somewhere. Anyway, what's really funny about these games, I looked into it a little bit. This one says it's by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, but it's revised by Frank Mentzer. So who is that guy? Frank Mentzer, actually, he was one of the original D&D players, meaning he bought the product back in 1974-ish and was playing with his friends. And they actually threw out an ad in the late 70s. We need a new editor. And so he was the guy they hired to edit this. And he's still alive today, actually, kicking around. He had retreated from the game world because back in 1985 and 86, he left TSR with Gygax. Frank Mentzer helped edit/write the Temple of Elemental Evil, and that's really cool. Now the funny thing is all of these books, the basic, the expert, the companion, the master, and the immortal, they all actually got compiled into a book that I have here. This is kind of my reference for the ancient D&D stuff. This was made in 1991. Whereas these were started off in 1983, and yes, these are old books. This thing wasn't done by Gary Gygax, Arneson, or Frank Mentzer. I go and look through to look at the credits here. I find Aaron Allston. Aaron Allston, who's he? You know what? I know he wrote one of the settings that I've actually been in the most. Canon settings. I've been in homebrew settings endlessly. But as far as canon settings, I haven't played very much of them, except for like Council of the Worms and in Hollow World. And so Aaron Allston did Hollow World as well. Aaron Allston died in 2004 at a convention. He actually did a lot of the development for the Mystara world that you find in a lot of the old D&D books. Let me bring up the maps. See, Mystara was kind of not so much his baby, but he helped develop it. There's the world of Mystara, originally speaking, and most of the original D&D setting takes place in the world of Mystara. This Cyclopedia that he helped compile just had all the notes that were from all the rules that were from your previous box sets all compiled in one book. And in fact, it's kind of funny, the Mystic, I think, is a new class introduced. They also introduced the Druid in this book, which is old hat for anybody who's playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, but still. Race is class, of course, and then, of course, the various different human types here: Wizard, Thief, Fighter, and, of course, relatively Cleric. Yeah, most of the pages looked like this back in the older days. They didn't have to stick a piece of art in every page. But they did still try to go with the best looking graphic design they could at the time. So this book from 1991, good compilation of all the previous rules for the basic Dungeons and Dragons game, but you still need something to play it in. And one thing I've been familiar with, in the old D&D, there was no race. You had a class. And for those who found that restricting, where you had like your humans had most of the real classes, elves are the other spellcasting class, and you had this very strange halfling class and very strange dwarf class. If that felt restricting to you, the Hollow World actually introduced a bunch of different stuff. It's a different, also by Aaron Allston. It's a bunch of different things in Hollow World. First of all, they include bunches of new classes for humans. So if you were tired of playing just the 4 basic human classes, they had stuff like pirates, various different tribesmen. A lot of them were race-based, where it's kind of weird. Like if you wanted to play an Aztec warrior class, it's in here. If you wanted to play like a Viking raider class, it's in here. They're slightly renamed, but they're all in here. And so here we have the cover, which is dominated by the goddess of strange boob squishes. And then we have the player's guide. The Aztecs were actually pretty brutal. They got double hit points at first level, but no armor. So, you know, it kind of traded one for the other. And see that format where it's like the old, just, you know, it's like a brownish beige, black and white color, where it's all just that three-color, three-tone mix. You also got things like shadow elves, and these guys were actually pretty cool. They were like dog priests, so you could play a priest that was a dog instead of being your standard cleric, and it was pretty interesting. They also had micro people. That's right. These, like, you can put them in your pocket, but you can also pull them out and throw them somewhere. They also had a few other different human classes that I won't cover because there's just too many of them to remember. I had photocopied some stuff here, like character sheets, and I actually printed out the color thing for the maps. I'll show you the maps in a second. Hex maps. Hex maps for days. Do you like hex maps? I like hex maps. This one came in two parts. Notice how it's kind of cut at the bottom? You're supposed to overlap it with the other one, and together the entire hex map. This one's upside down to you guys. Excuse me. The entire hex map can be hung out on your wall, and you can plot your campaign wherever you're going to. There's two of these, the top part and the bottom part, so I'm not going to spend too much time dawdling on maps. Second map. But of course it came with the Dungeon Master source book, which is actually very in-depth. I love this book because it covers a lot. The setting mostly. And it's got things like NPCs, how certain civilizations act and construct themselves, how they would react to PCs just wandering in. It's white and blue, and white, black, and blue, which I find really interesting. Most of it is just text. I mean, they have art in here and there, of various different cultures. There's a dinosaur guy. I think they actually had a god that was a T-Rex in this setting. Pretty dang cool. But yeah, so here's the Dungeon Master source book, and then of course they have an adventure book with different adventures. These two maps I leave at the bottom because I never really use these. They're just the Outer World and the Hollow World setting map. Look, the entire globe with yes, it's hollow with holes in the top you can go into. Strange, isn't that? So, yeah. So something like this is what you'd be seeing in the setting. I really like these old sets where they threw like maps in there into the box, and they had different things that they would. By the way, the back of this box was very simple. It just had the words in the black ball. Go like that. Yeah, I really liked these old box sets that had like the three books usually, and character sheets. Of course I printed off my own character sheets here. Kind of had to. They're at the back of every player's guide traditionally, though. So there's your character sheet from there. So as far as old D&D goes, I don't think it's played. I think most people who play the old stuff play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or second edition or something like that. But in any case, this was really fun to have and look over because it was different, and it was the basic introduction of the game. People forget that this game has come a long way, and in fact to the point where we've had the founder of the game actually die on us. So in any case, this is just me talking a little bit about the original basic D&D and how awkward that was, or how fun, because it really was designed as your beginning to role-playing. So yeah, thank you for watching.